It's very difficult to put into words how you feel other than it's just a shock, total shock, and a surprise. Even though my dad was in his 80s, I was still really surprised. And obviously with Liam, even more surprised because he was so young.
Simon Cowell is opening up about Liam Payne's tragic death. During a conversation for the November 29th podcast episode of New York Times' The Interview, the former X Factor judge reflected on the moment he found out Payne had passed last year, comparing the feeling to when he lost his own family member.
But yeah, of course we're going to talk about it. Somebody who works with me very close came into my room. I was up in the north of England, and I could tell on the look of her face that she was upset. And, she said that, sit down, and she told me, and it was like, wow. It's a bit like I felt when I heard the news about when my dad passed away, that you can't really, it's very difficult to put into words how you feel other than it's just a shock, total shock, and a surprise. Even though my dad was in his 80s, I was still really surprised. And obviously with Liam, even more surprised because he was so young.
The 66-year-old went on to reveal what he did next.
And at that point, you're not really thinking clearly other than I just remember saying, I really need to speak to his mum and dad. Can you get them on the phone as soon as possible, please? Because I know, as a parent, what that must have, felt like. And I knew his mum and dad, and I wanted to reach out in that moment, just to say, how I felt. And, it was just awful.
Cowell also recalled spending time with Payne a year before his death, reflecting on how he was doing at the time.
And I'd seen him like a year before in this room, and I remember seeing him walk into this room, and I looked at him and, God, you look amazing, Liam. You look great. What have you done? Well, I'm going to the gym and blah, blah, blah. We talked about his son and, how much it means to be a dad. And I was talking to him about, there's more to life than just music. You've got to a point in your life where you've got choice now, etc. And I think we were just hung out as friends. That's why I was so shocked and surprised when I heard the news,
The TV show judge, who formed One Direction in 2010 during the group's time on The X Factor, also touched on the singer's previous comments about how the young men were surrounded by influences like alcohol during their fame. Payne had previously opened up about his struggle with addiction.
When we were in the band, the best way to secure us, because of how big it got, was just lock us in our rooms. And of course, what's in the room? Minibar.
Did you know about that at the time?
A little bit. And we, there was stuff I never would have spoken about, then, which was private conversations I had and advice I tried to give him, which is what comes with fame, et cetera, et cetera. But, like we talked, when you're signing a lot of artists, and when you sign an artist, my role is essentially get them with the right production team, get the managers, and try and make them successful. But at the same time, I probably had about 20 artists on my books at the time. And it is a little bit like they leave the nest, You always say you're available as and when you need to be, but you can't follow them everywhere. And if I could go back in time to that one day when he was in my house here, and then obviously, you always think about things like that. What if I'd said this? What if I'd said that? But, there's only so much you can do with any artist. If you just have one artist in your life, maybe you can, but I'm not a manager, which means my job is to run the label. And you just hope that they are, first of all, successful and happy.
Payne and Cowell first met in 2008 when the singer auditioned for The X Factor. After he was eliminated that year, he returned in 2010 when the band, which also featured Harry Styles, Niall Horan, Louis Tomlinson, and Zayn Malik, was eventually formed. Payne died last year on October 16th after falling from a hotel's third-floor balcony in Buenos Aires, Argentina. A translated autopsy report also noted that he had alcohol, cocaine, and prescription antidepressant in his body. The One Direction star was 31.